Every day on television and in the newspapers you read and hear, we have the best 3G network. Our network covers 90%, 97% of the people in the country. We have the first 4G network. Our 4G network is better than your 4G network. Now, of course, when this all started about 30 years ago, that was the first generation, that's what the G is, network. We didn't know there was going to be a second generation network. The first generation, the first set of cell phones was simply an analog system, simple, miraculous the way it worked, but still by today's standards, relatively simple. And you know, why go to great effort? How many people want to use a car phone while they're driving? This is not going to really catch on. Well, clearly it did catch on, and the engineers said, I think we can do better. I think if we use digital instead of analog, we can provide better service, and more importantly, we can have a 4-to-1 advantage over cell phone towers. And cell phone towers back then cost, with the antenna on it, cost about $1 million each. So if you can cram 4 times as much stuff on a cell phone tower, this is financially a pretty good deal. Well, that digital caught on. People started using it not only in cars, but out of cars. For a while, we even called it a personal communication system, PCS. What it amounted to, the cars was almost incidental. We started using cell phones everywhere. I carry one, you probably carry one. And therefore, the technology had to improve in order for people, in order for the system to accommodate all the extra traffic. And then recognize it was voice traffic. This is a cell phone we're talking about. In order to accommodate all that extra traffic. And they improved the system with different electronic techniques. Very complex ones, incidentally. I never managed to get beyond the first couple of paragraphs, although I keep trying. And we came up with the 3G network, the third generation. Hey, it's the third iteration of all of that electronics. And that's what most of the country is living by today. But it keeps getting bigger and faster and more of a demand, and everybody needs it. And the most important thing was that cell phone evolved itself. We were able to recognize we were able to put more and more on a chip. We could now get 1 million transistors on the head of a pin, literally. So everything got smaller. And as it got smaller, you could do more with that cell phone. And what did they do more? They turned that cell phone into a computer. And that is known as a smartphone. Well, is it a telephone? Well, I guess we could talk on it, but we don't all that often. We use that funny little keyboard and try to find the letters, and we send data on it. So recognize, this is the significant point. We have merged the cell phone system with the computer system. Your computer system that you all have on your desk or your laptop or something plugs into the wall and gets tied to the telephone system. I think we call it DSL, digital subscriber line. At any rate, it goes not by radio, but it goes by landline, wireline, either copper or fiber, perhaps. That's the computer network. It is a landline system. Now, to avoid confusion, many of you have a little local area network in your house, so that that computer in the back room can, in fact, talk on that same line without stringing wires throughout the house. That's a local area network. It's like Wi-Fi. It's your personal Wi-Fi. Let's ignore that. The system is still a landline system. On the other hand, the cellular system is not a landline system. It's a wireless system. Now, here's the point that I think is most important and usually eludes everybody. We talk about the wireless network. Haven't I? 4 times already. 2G, 3G, 4G wireless network. Where's this network? Some people believe that if I make a cell phone call with my cell phone to a cell phone in California, the conversation jumps from tower to tower across the country. No, it does not. What happens? My conversation, strictly cell phone now, my conversation goes from this phone by radio to the tower. That's the wireless network. That's it. What happens when that conversation gets to the tower? It runs down the tower by copper. It goes underground by copper or fiber to the local telephone office and enters the huge, huge, long-distance telephone network. In exactly the same way your telephone at home gets across country with a conversation. The wireless network, therefore, is nothing. It's no big deal. Well, it's an extremely expensive big deal, and it's very difficult, but it's not an extensive thing that you have to draw on a map of the United States. It is simply that link between your cell phone and the tower. Big deal. What's so hard about that? What's so hard about that is the spectrum available to make that call. And that's why the telephone companies and the wireless companies are spending billions, not millions, but billions of dollars buying spectrum in the various parts of the country to get from the cell phone to the tower. It's done with electronic auctions through the Federal Communications Commission. The auctions last, nobody has to go there, you don't sit in an auditorium. It's an electronic auction and goes on for weeks. And the bidding continues until the bidding stops, and then someone has a winner. And they are literally spending billions of dollars to secure more spectrum between individual cell phones and that tower. That is the wireless network. Now let's back up a minute and make sure we got the 2 networks straight. The wireless network is the communication channels between my telephone and the tower. The conversation or anything else on that link goes down the tower with fiber, with copper, into the long-distance telephone network, just as does your normal telephone call. And make no mistake, there are millions of miles of this network. It's a huge spider web across the country. And the engineers are able to reroute traffic as required and to expand it and send more traffic in one way than another way. As an aside, suppose the traffic suppose there had been a major tornado between here and, let's say, Orlando, and there's no traffic, no telephone traffic, no nothing traffic between here and Orlando. The red lights flash, the bells ring, and a call being made from Tampa, St. Petersburg, to Orlando will very likely go south to Sarasota, across the state, up the state, and then over to Orlando, which is another way of saying all of this can instantly be rerouted, and is. These people are on 24-hour duty standing in front of these particular screens. And finally, there is always a group of people on hand ready instantly to get on an airplane and go where the problem is. But I'm getting away from my subject. The wireless network is from the cell phone to the tower. The landline network goes from the wall in my house to which my computer is connected to this telephone office and into that same telephone network. And look what they did with that smartphone. It's no longer a telephone, it's a computer. Well, the telephone belongs on that wireless network because it's a cell phone. The computer, on the other hand, somehow belongs, doesn't it, on the landline phone. What they're doing is sending the computer data from your cell phone on that wireless network, that cellular network. Kind of tough, because data is very demanding of spectrum. Talking is very slow and does not require much spectrum. Data at megabits per second requires an awful lot of spectrum, and therefore they are constantly buying more traffic, more spectrum to get from the cell phone to the tower. Now in the last couple of days, I'm not saying this has been invented in the last couple of days, but we've seen some things happening. Wouldn't it be nice if that wireless channel between my cell phone and the tower, if it's kind of clogged up, because all you people using data, if somehow we couldn't route that traffic onto the landline network. And little gadgets are applied so you do not know whether the data traffic emanating from your cell phone, smartphone, not my cell phone, from your smartphone, you don't even know if it's going by that wireless link or whether it's going into the wall of wherever you are, or a Wi-Fi network at Starbucks or at TIA, and getting to where it's supposed to go that route. And back up a second. Do you realize what happens if that wireless network, telephone to tower, gets clogged up with too much traffic? You don't get dial tone, and you get dropouts. And that is the biggest problem with the AT&T network, because the AT&T network is overloading. iPhones have pretty much done it. That iPhone is being used for data everywhere. And therefore, that wireless network is being clogged up. I guess that's the kind of problem you like if you've got that many customers. They have more customers than they can handle. And therefore, there are dropouts, and AT&T is not getting the best ratings so far as service is concerned. So what do we say? Then back way up to the wireless network. From my cell phone to the tower. With the 4G network, fourth generation, they have gone to one of two different technologies. One of those technologies is called WiMAX. There's no significance to the word at all. It's really not an expansion of Wi-Fi, and I should really stretch it. WiMAX is the technology used by Sprint primarily. They were the first, to get from the phone to the tower. And WiMAX is better, and the distance separating the tower and the phone can be greater, and you can handle more data over that link. Well, everybody didn't adopt that WiMAX. So Sprint has really, in the last 6 months, a year, been pushing that. What's the others doing? Verizon just recently came out with a different technology called LTE, long-term evolution. AT&T is coming out with it too. It's another technology just as complicated that can have this extended range that WiMAX has. So as we are moving to 4G, what are we doing? We're permitting a greater separation between the cell phone and the tower, and the technology permits more data to be transmitted on that particular link. That's the Achilles heel. Recognize that link. Hey, that spider web of fiber in the country is able to handle it all. If it's busy between here and Tallahassee, we'll reroute the call through some other city. But we can't do that. We've got to do it on that wireless link. Now, you perhaps have heard, and I'm not going to get into this. I'll just mention it as a word: network neutrality. What if Google starts using one of those links, chunks of spectrum, between their huge data center and the tower? And they really dump data out there so that you and I, if you happen to be on that same link, cannot get on it. No dial tone. I can't get on it because Google is using it all. Should the operators, the owners of that link, be able to control the traffic being sent on that link? There's two sides and they're both reasonable. One says, heck no, they shouldn't be able to do that. We want this system, internet, cell phones, landline, we want all of this to be available to everybody. We don't want some company I don't much care for controlling whether or not I will be allowed to send data on that link. The other side of that argument says, hey, if I'm one of those guys waiting for dial tone and Google is sending all that data, I wish somebody would cut them off or charge them more or do something so that I can send my data, which is nothing but an email or a download of some app or even of streaming video so that I can use it. And that's what the big argument is about. And we twist it by calling network neutrality kind of a, isn't that nice? I like it all to be neutral. Hey, be careful what it really means. So I'm going to summarize. There's two networks. The wireless network consists of the link between my telephone and the tower. The landline telephone is the copper or fiber between my computer or home telephone to the central office. That's where the struggle is, and most things are going mobile. More and more are using the wireless network more and more.